professional development mini-series event for fall 2021. This session is titled Feed Your Soul Wellness Tips for the Holidays and Beyond. Just a few housekeeping notes as we get started. I am recording the session and it will be available on the CRC website next week. We would love for you to also interact with our presenters as the session is going on. So please feel free to use the chat feature to share comments. The Q&A feature is also active, so you can ask Wendy or LeAnne questions as we go. And I'll also moderate questions for them at the end to make sure that we get everything you want to know answered. Our presenters today are local registered dietitian and nutritionist Wendy Pedraza and Meredith College Master of Nutrition graduate student LeAnne Greene. This session will provide practical wellness ideas for navigating the holidays and beyond while still enjoying your favorite seasonal treats and traditions. LeAnne will also be doing a cooking demonstration of a yummy dish perfect for the holiday season at the end. Wendy Pedraza graduated from North Carolina State University in 2001 and then received her Master's of Science from Meredith College in 2018. She owns a telehealth-based nutrition consulting practice here in Raleigh. Wendy counsels clients statewide on the principles of health at every size, intuitive eating, and whole body health. She has a passion for weight-inclusive care and employs a partnership-based approach with her clients on their wellness journey. Wendy has two daughters, ages 14 and 11, an adorable dog, Tully, and she and her husband, Mike, enjoy hiking, running, and cooking together. Along with Wendy, we have LeAnne Greene, who is a 2019 graduate of East Carolina University with a Bachelor's of Science in Biology. Currently, LeAnne is pursuing a Master's of Science in Nutrition at Meredith College. She's previously worked as a genetic counselor assistant at a children's hospital where she discovered her passion for nutrition working alongside a metabolic dietitian. When she's not working on coursework, she enjoys spending time with her family and pets, visiting the beach, crocheting, and of course, trying new recipes. Thank you both for providing this session for us. We are so excited and think it will be so fun and informative. And, I love to offer a personal development session in our professional development as well. And we hope that you enjoy your time with our colleagues at the cooperating Raleigh colleges. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to you, Wendy.
Great. Thank you so much, Mara. Thank you for that introduction. And thanks to you all on the call. I'm sorry we can't be in person, but I feel you out there. I feel your energy. I appreciate the fact that you want to take an hour for personal development. I love that this is personal development instead of professional development today, because personal development is also very important. So as Mara mentioned, we're going to talk about wellness tips that we really can take not only through the holidays, but into 2022. So the clients that I work with in my practice, we really talk about sustainable lifestyle habits. So not diets and quick fixes, but things that you really can carry through your life and that fit into your life. So we're going to talk about mindful eating and health at every size. As Maura said, those are the two foundations of my practice. We're going to talk about how to build a balanced plate, whether that is at the Thanksgiving meal next week or just your lunch tomorrow. We're going to talk about whole body health. And then, as Mara mentioned, we're going to be treated to a cooking demo by my intern and graduate student, LeAnne Greene. And then we'll wrap up with questions. But as Mara mentioned, if you have anything pressing throughout the presentation, Mara is going to monitor the chat, and I'll try to pause and ask if there's anything going on there. So I kind of just want to ground us first in this idea. I loved it when Mara came up with the idea of Feed Your Soul as the title for this presentation. I think that sounds very positive and nurturing, which is the how I try to run my business. And I think, you think about going to hear a nutritionist talk or a dietitian talk, you might think that I'm going to give you a list of foods that you should never eat or give you some sort of prescriptive diet plan. And so I really just want to go ahead and ground us in the idea that we're not going to talk about restriction or foods being off limits. We're not going to talk about anything that kind of brings shame, which very often can happen when you're talking about maybe healthcare or visiting with a nutritionist. I think many of us on the call have probably experienced being in a situation where we felt shame either about our food choices or about how our body looks. And I really am working in my industry with many other professionals who feel the same way to sort of remove that and create a more supportive environment for health and wellness. So jumping right into mindful eating, sort of mindful eating 101, what I talk about with my clients in our initial consult is something that's really been life altering for me personally. This is something that I learned about in graduate school from the dietitian that I worked for. And it involves sort of tuning into our body's hunger cues in a way that I never had really considered before. I always thought about more prescriptive diet plans and do eat this and don't eat that, and this is good and this is bad. And what it asks you to do is just kind of honor what your body's telling you. Our body is talking to us all the time, and it's really, really smart. And so if you feel a hunger cue, rather than thinking, oh, I'm going to be good and either not eat or eat a small portion, you eat, and you eat to the point of comfortable fullness. You also want to notice how food makes you feel physically and mentally. And this is really the crux of it. For me, I love apple fritters, for example. But I know I can't have one every morning for breakfast because it just doesn't make me feel good physically and mentally. They are always going to be part of my life. I'm never going to say I can't have apple fritters, but it's a sometimes food. So I work with kids a lot and we talk about everyday foods and sometimes foods. And so you can kind of imagine what that list might look like for you. And unfortunately for me, that has to be apple fritters because it makes me feel bloated. It doesn't give me very much energy for the day. It doesn't help my mental sharpness. And I've found other foods that do. And so mindful eating just kind of says, you know, you will naturally gravitate towards foods that make you feel good if you kind of start to tune into that. And of course, tuning in, being mindful involves slowing down enough to do that. Now, we're all going to eat on the go sometimes. We're all going to have a pizza night in front of a movie sometimes. But as much as possible, limiting screens, slowing down and being present with your food and with the people that you're eating with. And that way you can notice what foods make you feel really, really good. And you can notice if you're still hungry or if you're starting to feel full. So don't leave the table still hungry in the name of health. You'll lead to overeating later. So we always want to leave the table with that comfortable fullness. And if you're really interested in digging into mindful eating, there's a great app that was developed by a physician, or you can just do it, you know, in your own brain or with a journal. So it really involves unconditional permission to eat. So this is also sort of a new concept if you're like me in your 40s and grew up with kind of that toxic, restrictive diet culture. If you're hungry, eat something because there's detrimental health effects to skipping meals. And those can include overproduction of the hunger hormone. So your body is telling you you're hungry, you ignore it, so your body churns it up and tells you more that you're hungry. And this can adapt and churn out more of it over time than you actually need. It also can decrease your metabolism to restrict or meal skip too much. I don't think anybody ever said, man, I wish my metabolism was slower, because your body kind of says, oh, she's only feeding me 1,200 calories a day. I guess I need to slow down and learn to survive on 1,200 calories a day. So you don't want to restrict too much and slow your metabolism down. It's also a stress response to live in a starved state. So once we've kind of gone through all the nutrients that we've eaten, we are in a starved versus a fed state. And it signals our body to store fat. So you might think that meal skipping and restriction actually would lead to weight loss, but it actually your body kind of says, uh-oh, I need to hang on to whatever little bit I've got because I don't know how long it's going to be before he or she feeds me again. It can negatively impact your blood sugar. Your blood sugar starts to plummet when you're not eating, which can lead to sugar craving. So if you've ever been in a situation where you have maybe a small lunch, you don't have a snack, and you get home from work and it's like, whatever I can just shove in my mouth as quickly as possible. You're having a sugar craving at that moment. And for good reason. Our body is really smart and our body knows that a processed carb or a sugar source is our quickest source of energy. And so they're just trying to get the glucose back in there. Our brain needs it, our body needs it. So to eliminate those sugar cravings, you really just have to kind of stay in front of your hunger. So that again is eating when you have a little bit of a hunger cue. And so again, I just invite you next time, even your lunch today or your meal tonight, think about how you feel afterwards. And my guess is we all rather feel these adjectives on the left versus these adjectives on the right. And they're going to happen sometimes, and there's no shame about that. That's just information that like, okay, maybe I overate or that food didn't serve me very well. But really try to think about foods that make you feel satisfied, energetic, just full enough versus these adjectives on the right. And start balancing your life with more of the foods that make you feel the green words here. So how can we take this through the holidays? So first and foremost, I still say enjoy your favorite treats and traditions. You know, we talked about everyday foods and sometimes foods. There are certain things that are only around at the holidays. And there's a quality of life component of that that I think is really important. There are no forbidden foods. So for me, this is my mom's toffee. She only makes it once a year, and I'm going to have some. And I encourage you to do the same. But you don't want to go into these situations overly hungry. So again, staying out in front of your hunger with snacks. Don't meal skip because we're going to a big party, and just look for ways to balance your treats and indulgences with some fiber and protein. And we'll talk about examples of those in a moment. So throughout the presentation, I'm just going to kind of do a key takeaway slide at the end of each section. So if you're a person like me who really likes bullet points, this is the slide for you. So just to kind of wrap up mindful eating, eat when you feel hungry, slow down enough to notice when you're starting to feel full, and choose foods that make you feel good physically and mentally. So now I want to introduce you guys to a concept called health at every size. And as Mara mentioned, this is one of the key principles of my practice. It is a relatively new approach to healthcare and approach to wellness in the lifespan of healthcare. It was developed or really gained traction in the early 2000s. And it really supports health and wellness outside of the context of weight. So rather than a weight-centric approach to correcting a chronic disease or lab values, it really is more supportive outside of the context of weight, and other lifestyle changes kind of takes weight out of the picture. So it encourages eating in a flexible manner. So you can see a lot of overlap here with the mindful eating that we just talked about. It encourages you to find joyful movement. So a lot of times when people think about trying to exercise, it's something that they dread, or crushing it at the gym for 90 minutes every single day. And maybe that's just not sustainable for you. If it is, great. But if it's not, I encourage you to find something that you enjoy. That's what you're going to do long term. And get creative when you think about that. It could be a tennis lesson or swimming laps or a dance class. It doesn't have to be what your neighbor is doing or what your sister is doing. And just a little bit most days of the week can have huge benefits. And health at every size, obviously, as you can tell by the name, respects the natural diversity of body shapes. There's a very, very broad range of healthy body sizes, and our society, unfortunately, has made people think that there's only a very narrow range of acceptable body sizes, and it's just not the case. So HAES, as I mentioned, or health at every size, has been around since the early 2000s. So there's been robust data that has come out on cohorts of people that have been exposed to this type of intervention. And this is actually a summary of 7 studies that looked at weight-centric interventions for health and health at every size interventions for health. And overwhelmingly, the health at every size studies had more favorable results. And they really do work. So the goal is the same. We all want our patients to have health, longevity, feel good, live a long time. So this is not just throwing it all out the window, but it's just taking the focus off of weight and focusing on other aspects of life. And the outcomes, as you can see here, are very positive. Lower cholesterol, better self-esteem, less binge eating, which is becoming a really big issue, and increased physical activity. So all very positive. I'm not going to read all this, but I just kind of wanted to let y'all know sort of what kind of brought me to health at every size in the first place. I like the weight inclusive nature of it. And I think that the weight-based interventions that some healthcare professionals can lean towards kind of has some stigma that might make people reluctant to seek healthcare in the first place. And most importantly, I just want to say that weight is not as simple as calories consumed versus calories burned. It's multifactorial, and that's why it really can't be the key indicator of health, and that health and longevity are possible regardless of weight status. So how can you implement this in your life? First and foremost, take the focus off of weight. Health changes can be very, very positive. I'm not advocating for not, trying new foods or eating vegetables or exercising, but just take it outside of the context of weight. Focus on health, not thinness. Respect all bodies. Avoid words like overweight, diet, weight loss. And this is just as much for you as it would be for any little ears that you might live with. So I have a teen and a tween daughter. I'm hoping that the world kind of goes towards this paradigm shift where we kind of get these words out of our vocabulary. Eating disorders are just running rampant, body dissatisfaction, shaming. And I really think that we can be the voice of kind of changing the dialogue around this. Again, find enjoyable physical activity, honor your body signals of hunger and fullness. So again, mindful eating, and just take diets out of the picture. We're looking for a long-term sustainable eating plan that nourishes you. So the key takeaway here is health, mobility, and longevity are possible outside of the context of weight. And honestly, focusing too much on weight can actually have adverse health effects. So getting on the scale every day, again, a stress response that actually signals our body to store fat. So again, you could be working against your health goals if you're having this feeling of failure over and over again and causing a lot of stress in your body. You might be actually causing the opposite effect. So it has been shown throughout the research not to be the best approach. So that's health at every size in a nutshell. I'll pause now, Mara, to see if there's any questions or anything, or should I just keep going?
There's no questions at this moment, but we can give everyone a second if anyone has any questions for this or comments for this.
Okay. I'm happy to take them at the end.
Okay.
Okay. Well, just, feel free to let me know if anybody jumps on with anything. So now we're going to talk about building a balanced meal, which could also be building a balanced snack. And this could be at Thanksgiving or, again, your lunch tomorrow. So to me, the magic combination is being really intentional about incorporating fat, fiber, and protein, or fat, carbohydrates, and protein. So you maybe have heard the term macronutrients before, and that just means those are the nutrients that we need in the highest quantity throughout the day, necessary for survival. And when I say carbohydrates or fiber, I kind of use those interchangeably because complex carbohydrates are our source of fiber. So I just wanted to make sure that these words are thrown around a lot, but just make sure everyone kind of understands which foods fall into each one of these categories. So this is by no means obviously an exhaustive list of foods, but these are just some examples. And so you could use these examples to build your plate or build your snack. The highlighted ones are just kind of wanted to show that it doesn't have to be one individual food for each item. So if you're thinking about your dinner tonight, it's not like a fat, a carb, and a protein. Things like nuts and seeds, hummus, beans have fiber and protein. So some fall into both categories, which is really nice because I do think having fat, fiber, and protein even at your snacks is really important. And so if you need just a quick and easy snack, a small handful of mixed nuts or an apple with some nut butter on the top of it, and you would have your really balanced snack. So this could be something that you try to incorporate. Just next time you have a meal, just look at what you're eating and say, am I lacking any part of this? And again, not to pick too much on the diet culture I grew up in, but I grew up in the fat-free generation. And we have certainly learned that that is not the positive way to eat because you'll end up being so hungry pretty soon afterwards. So fat is critically important and should be a component of every meal. And why is that? So fat is that long-term energy source. So as I said, you'll be hungry pretty soon afterwards. So if you were, for example, to have like a grilled chicken and some vegetables with dinner tonight, you might notice as you're, reading or sitting on the couch that within an hour or two, you're pretty hungry. And that's because you haven't had that long-term energy source that fat can provide. So it really is more beneficial to drizzle some olive oil on top, sprinkle some feta cheese on top. In addition to that, there are certain vitamins that we cannot absorb unless they are consumed in the presence of fat. And those are vitamins A, D, E, and K. So if you've ever had a sweet potato, a lot of people are familiar with the fact that like sweet potatoes and carrots have vitamin A in them. Well, if you were just to have a plain sweet potato or a plain carrot, you would still get the fiber and a lot of health benefits, but you'd be missing the vitamin A. It would just pass right through your GI tract and be excreted in your waste. And so it actually is better to do a little pat of butter or drizzle of olive oil on that sweet potato. It actually makes it more healthy for you. So isn't that good news? And also fat insulates our vital organs, and the list is very, very long. So fiber, carbohydrates, that's our short-term energy, as I mentioned. Our brains love carbohydrates. They really need it. So if you've ever had brain fog, it could be because you haven't had enough carbs. Aids digestion. It helps our cholesterol. So eating foods with fiber, any food that any cholesterol that might have been in that food, if you eat it in the presence of fiber, it'll help it just move through your GI tract rather than be absorbed into your bloodstream, which then would elevate the cholesterol levels in your blood. And then protein helps with fullness, obviously necessary for muscle growth and repair, and many other things. So all of these work synergistically for blood sugar regulation, which is critically important for all of us. So whether you're somebody who has diabetes or is pre-diabetic or has it in your family history or not, we all need to think about keeping our blood sugar regulated. So it's not just something for people who live in the diabetes world. It actually is very important for all of us, for mood, for energy, for hormones. And so having all three of these at your meals and snacks will regulate your blood sugar and just be extremely positive for your health. So what does this look like? So these are just some examples of meals that would include fat, fiber, and protein. And I just kind of wanted to show that it doesn't just have to be a plate that's like fat, fiber, protein. So, you know, the one down on the left with the salmon and the veggies and the rice is how it could look. But you also could do this in a stew or in an omelet or on your pizza. I often work with clients on, as I mentioned, I don't like to talk about restriction, but rather what can you add? If you're somebody who has pizza every Friday night, do you have some vegetables that you maybe wouldn't mind adding to that? Some onions or some banana peppers to help that fiber help you pass the cholesterol and not absorb the cholesterol in that meal. You know, it could be a burger. You put some shredded onions or some shredded cabbage on top of that. So get creative and think about what you're already eating and what you can add to it. So taking this into the holidays, this is an image from Fitbit that I just thought did a really good job. You know, just filling your plate in a more balanced way. A lot of the favorites around the holidays can be primarily carbohydrates. And even though the plate on the left looks good, I know I would feel somewhat bloated and lethargic afterwards versus the plate on the right. Still has all the favorite foods on there, but maybe also balancing it with whatever vegetables are offered. If it needs to be that you're the one who brings the vegetables to balance the plate, that's what I have to do at my mother-in-law's house. But I still am going to eat her stuffing, which is one of my favorite things that I look forward to all year. And so maybe the plate on the right, you have seconds if you're not full, or you have room for dessert. So just looking for ways to balance it, not cutting anything out. If mashed potatoes are your thing, still have your mashed potatoes. So takeaway here is just take a moment to assess your meals and snacks. Are you eating them in a balanced way? If you're a big pasta person, rather than just having a bowl of pasta for dinner, maybe put some broccoli florets and some diced chicken in there. Just balance your meals a little bit. You'll feel better. Your energy will be better. You'll sleep better. And your body will thank you. Okay, so I just want to clarify a little bit about carbohydrates before we switch gears a little bit, because they have just gotten so much coverage in the news. They're kind of, some people hate them, some people love them, some people cut them out completely. I don't think it's necessary to cut them out completely, and I don't think that's optimal for health. So it is your body's primary energy source. So it starts breaking down in your mouth. It's absorbed very quickly. So if you're going for a workout, having a carbohydrate beforehand is the way to go. Your brain prefers it, as I said. So we don't want to completely cut them out. We just want to focus on quality and quantity. And again, this is our fiber source. I know I've harped on fiber a lot, but we do need it really with all meals and snacks every day. And again, whether you're thinking about regularity or not, if you're someone who's already very regular, you still need to have fiber. Again, the cholesterol, the blood sugar, digestion. So men need about 28, women need about 25. I really think that's like an at least. Some people need more. And so when you consider this point of reference that apples only have 5 grams, you realize you really do have to be intentional over the course of the day. So if you're not starting out with breakfast and getting a little bit of fiber, it really is hard to get the full amount of grams that you need over the course of the day. And most people aren't. So here's some examples of processed versus complex. So when I talk about fiber, I'm talking about the complex. Again, not completely eliminating the foods on the left. My guess is a lot of the foods on the left are some favorite foods for people. I know I've mentioned apple fritters being a pastry, a favorite for me, but just have to be mindful about the fact that that is going to have a very quick absorption into my bloodstream and a very quick glycemic response, meaning my blood sugar goes up and comes back down if I eat it by itself and there's nothing else in my stomach. You know, all the fiber has been stripped away and you're going to be hungry sooner. But if you were to have some of these items on the left and pair it with some of these items on the right and pair it with some protein, you will stay full longer. Your energy will be better. You won't have the brain fog. And you'll have a more even glycemic response. So your body will just kind of evenly absorb everything at a slower rate. You'll also stay full longer. So we do need carbohydrates. We don't want to completely cut them out, and they do a lot of positive things in our bodies. Okay, so moving on to whole body health. This is my last section. So thank you guys for sticking with me. This is another thing that I spend a lot of time talking to my clients about, because I think it, again, coming from sort of a weight-centric way to look at health, I think it's really important to reframe it. So if we're not just talking about weight, if we're taking weight off of the table, which if we're talking about feed your soul, I think this is a much more positive way to look at health. So what does it mean to be healthy? What do I talk to my clients about? Energy, mood, sleep, blood pressure, blood sugar, mobility. How's your stomach feeling? Your stomach is a really good indicator of how things are going with your nutrition. Lab values. I love geeking out to lab values with my clients. And that is something that we can work together to move the needle on. Cognition. So how is your brain working? Do you feel kind of like you get in a brain fog in the afternoon? Again, that could be some kind of balance with your carbohydrates and your protein. So this to me is health. And if you think about it, like I have literally had clients come to me where all of these things are going well, but they think they're carrying extra weight. And so they think they're not healthy. And so that sort of, to me, is sort of the light bulb moment that I want people to have. If all of these things are going well, you are healthy and you are at your healthy weight. That is your healthy weight. And you might be carrying more weight than you did when you were younger. You might be carrying more weight than your sister or your brother or your colleague, but that is your healthy weight if all of these things are going well, which is going to be a state where you are managing any risk for chronic disease. So again, kind of going back to the health at every size and kind of trying to shift the dialogue around that. So I really encourage you to look at the whole picture. So, I'm a dietitian. I talk to people about food, but I really think equally important is making time to relax, getting consistent quality sleep, moving a little bit most days, and eating what makes you feel good. And I've had clients come to me who are so frustrated because they're like, I'm eating well, I feel great about what I'm eating, or I'm working with a personal trainer and my health goals are just not being met. I still don't feel great, or my lab values aren't good. And it could very well be that it's because they need to assess these other aspects of their life. Maybe they're not managing their stress. Maybe they're getting really inconsistent, poor sleep. So similar to meal skipping, high stress and disrupted sleep also cause a stress response in our body. So same thing, cortisol is released, can lead to inflammation, which is just a snowball effect of other health issues. And it also signals fat storage. And so it could just be that really inconsistent sleep is helping you not meet your health goals, even if you're eating well and exercising every day. So I will talk to my clients about all four of these inevitably and just make sure that we're really focusing on all of them. And again, with the movement component of it, we're all busy. You guys obviously are all working. Just little nuggets of time to kind of get out and do something just for you can be hugely beneficial. I think sometimes what's intimidating about starting, like, oh, I'm going to start exercising. It's like, drive to the gym, do this, it's so time consuming. But really, the studies have shown that not just for physical health, but a short walk, a little bit of yoga, whatever that might be for you, a short bike ride has positive effects, not just physically, but also mentally. And then just eating what makes you feel good. And again, really start tuning into that and let mindfulness be your guide. So I have to wrap up with water. I can't do any kind of wellness presentation without a plug for water. If you're not already a big water drinker, let this be the one thing that you hear today. Water is just so critically important. This could be a presentation in and of itself, might be a little boring, but it could be a presentation in and of itself. It has so many roles in our body. As we know, our bodies are at least 60% water, and we need to hydrate all day. It's a lot harder to remember as we go into the winter months, but if you have issues with dry skin, that's some motivation to make sure you're getting your water. And the effects of even just mild dehydration on our cognition, on how we're able to move throughout our day without energy can start to mount up pretty quickly. So I have this bolded here: make water the first thing you drink in the morning, because this has been, it's so simple, but it's been like revolutionary for me, because I am my feet hit the ground, go straight to the coffee pot type person, and which is completely fine because there are tons of health benefits to coffee as well. So not saying skip the coffee, but if you think about it, you haven't had anything to drink probably for 8 or 9 hours at that point, and you would never do that during the day. So you actually are a little bit dehydrated when you wake up. And coffee, due to the caffeine, if you drink caffeinated coffee, is actually a diuretic. So it makes you go to the bathroom a little bit more over the course of the morning after you've had the coffee. And so you're dehydrating yourself further, and you're already a little bit dehydrated. And so I've started just sitting my big cup right in front of the coffee maker so that I go ahead and have like 8 ounces while the coffee is making. And I'm like, oh my God, I was actually really thirsty. And so the great thing about that is that you go ahead and start working on your water quota first thing in the morning before you even had coffee. If you don't like coffee, if you don't like water, adding some herbs or some fruit or a squeeze of lemon can make it a little bit more palatable. And aim for 2 to 3 liters a day. And then the big water bottle I have over here on the side, I've had a couple clients order this. And the nice thing about these, it's 64 ounces. So if you have trouble getting to a water refill station throughout the day, or you're just really busy, fill this thing up first thing in the morning, and then you get at least 64 ounces over the course of the day. Your body will thank you for that. So look at the whole picture. It's not just about food. I am a dietitian, but I'm here to say it's not just about food. Drink plenty of water, move, eat, and sleep, and unwind in ways that feed your soul. So hopefully there were some takeaways for you guys in there. I will take questions at the end or now, or I can go ahead and turn it over to LeAnne.
Wendy, there's quite a few questions. Do you want to cover a few and then we can turn it to LeAnne?
Sure.
So some that came on early on, can you elaborate on calories in versus calories out?
Yeah. So, sort of the old school way of looking at health or weight loss or, trying to have optimal health. It was, we need to burn more than we eat over the course of the day. And if you burn more than you eat over the course of the day, you'll lose weight, which I think y'all know by now, I don't think is necessarily needs to be the whole goal of health changes. But calories in, so what you consume versus calories burned. So whether it's your activities of daily living, just moving around the house, or your exercise routine, those total calories. So say you're somebody who eats about, 2,000 calories a day, but then with your workout and you're moving around the house and chasing kids, you burn 2,500 calories a day. The old philosophy was you should be losing weight. And some people weren't. And that's because weight loss or weight in general is multifactorial. It is not just what we eat and what we burn. It's not like a bank. There's a ton of other factors. First of all, your genetics, as you probably know, you can kind of look at your family. A lot of people have the similar body sizes. Some people are just going to have slower metabolism, live in a larger body. And that's, again, something I'm working to normalize. Second of all, your environment. So you could have been exposed to either environmental toxins or certain medications throughout the course of your life that now make it harder for you to lose weight. And you don't know that. And so it can be very, again, frustrating and demoralizing to just think, well, I'm eating less than I'm burning throughout the day. Why am I not losing weight? Well, it could be your genetics. It could be environmental factors. So it also could be your hormones. So hormones play a big role, as I've mentioned, cortisol, things like that, in our ability to maintain weight or lose weight or gain weight. Hormones are affected by environmental factors. They're affected by whether or not we're getting enough carbohydrates. So I really believe that weight is extremely multifactorial. Again, thinking about the hunger hormone, ghrelin. So if you're somebody who has been on a lot of diets throughout your life and you've kind of disrupted your natural ability to make, we have a hunger hormone and we have a fullness hormone. And so we could have disrupted our body's natural ability to make those hormones by going on really, really restrictive diets over the course of our life. So that's the problem with the yo-yo dieting. We've all, if you're my age, you've been there. So not to say anything against that, because we were doing what we were told was best at the time, but the yo-yo dieting really can disrupt that metabolism and the hormone production. So hopefully that answers the question.
It does. We had a lot of questions, so I have several. Asking if you can talk a bit about intermittent fasting, if that is a positive thing to do. Is it a good practice?
Okay. Yeah. And thank you guys. Anybody who offered up a question, I really appreciate it. So intermittent fasting, just for anyone who doesn't know, is eating within a short window of time throughout the day. So sort of the go-to is not eating for about 16 hours and then putting all of your meals in an 8-hour period. So I know people who might do it, not eat from like 8 o'clock until noon the next day, and then they eat from noon until 8 o'clock, and all of their meals are in that period. And I will say that I know, just like with the ketogenic diet, that there have been some positive outcomes as far as weight loss. As a whole for our bodies, though, I don't think it is what our bodies were designed to do. So my belief is that the best thing that we can do from a nutrition standpoint is eat within an hour or two of waking up. So you have already fasted at that point. So this kind of, my philosophy kind of flips that 16-18 on its head. So there really is a 16-hour period that we should be getting our meals and snacks, and maybe an 8-hour period where we're not eating. I've talked a little bit about the starved state that our body can go into when we are restricting too much. And that certainly would happen with intermittent fasting. So your body is going to churn out more of the hunger hormone. Your body is going, your metabolism over time could slow down, and is a very stressful state for your body to be in. So it can lead long-term to health problems. So again, sometimes it goes well for people short-term, which is why I think it's kind of gained traction right now. But long-term, it's stressful for our system. So you're going to have that pumping out of cortisol because you're not feeding yourself for what is a very extended period of time, which can lead to inflammation, which can long-term, again, slow down your metabolism. So I advocate for my clients. If clients come to me and they're doing that, I don't force them to get off of it. And we talk about ways to kind of work around it and fit things into their life, maybe just a really small, quick meal in the morning. But optimally for blood sugar, I genuinely believe that eating within an hour or two of waking up, that fat, fiber, and protein combination is really, really important for hormone health, for blood sugar, and a lot of other things. So I don't advocate for it, but I understand some people really like it, and I'm willing to work with people who believe in it. So that's kind of my 2 cents worth on that.
There's a few other questions, but do we want to go to LeAnne's cooking demonstration, and we can ask some questions at the end?
Sure. Yeah. Let's make sure we get time for LeAnne. I'll stop my share.
So like Wendy and Maura were saying at the beginning of the presentation, I'm going to do a quick cooking demonstration for a seasonal recipe. And we're going to be making butternut squash and apple soup. So to get started, I've already pre-roasted up some veggies, and we're just going to go ahead and add them to a pot. These were tossed in olive oil and salt and pepper, so there's not really a need to add more olive oil to your pot. And all we're doing here is we're just going to throw the veggies in and then add in 2 tablespoons of curry powder and warm that through before we add our liquid. So the reason we're warming the curry powder is just to kind of help the flavors get through, because most of the cooking was already done in the oven. This is a really quick recipe. Most of the time that you spend making the soup is really hands-off, which is a great thing when you have a lot of things going on in your kitchen, like next week for Thanksgiving.
LeAnne, can you share what vegetables you roasted on the pan before you put them in the pot?
Yeah, so it's butternut squash and 1 onion just cut into chunks, and 2 apples, whatever variety you want, as long as it's sweet and not tart like a Granny Smith. Although I have used tart Granny Smith because they're my favorite apple. And I will say I'm all about time-saving recipes because, like you guys have said, I'm a graduate student, so I really like buying the pre-chopped butternut squash, because butternut squash has that thick outer skin and can be kind of hard and annoying to peel. So if I don't have to do that, I'm excited. with just the last few veggies here. All right. So just mixing it together, making sure the spices are evenly distributed through our vegetable mixture. And you can see it's already like falling apart because we roasted it already. And then we're gonna add 2 cups of apple juice, or you can use apple cider if you want to add even more flavor. And then also a cup of water. And we'll turn that up and bring it to a boil before pureeing it into the soup.
LeAnne, we're getting quite a few requests for the recipe. So can we share that on the CRC website after the session has completed?
Yeah, absolutely. So in the essence of speeding things along, because it's going to take a while to bring all of this liquid to a boil, let's pretend it's boiling. And I like to use an actual blender. You can also use an immersion blender, whatever you feel like. And so I just scoop some into the jar of the blender. Oops. And then it gets kind of loud. But my tip is when you're blending, you want to make sure to remove this like vent piece to let some of the steam out so it doesn't get too hot in there and crack the blender jar or anything. So I'll go ahead and blend that up. It makes a really smooth, creamy soup, but I'm gonna go on mute so you guys don't have to listen to that loud noise. And so you can see, if I get it in the camera, it's a really smooth, creamy soup. And there was like no cream. It's just the butternut squash, the apples, the onion, and all of the liquid that we added. So super easy, quick, and really delicious.
Awesome. Thanks so much, LeAnne. That looks delicious. The last time I was joking with Wendy and LeAnne when we talked earlier this week that I had literally just made butternut squash soup, but I didn't do it with apple juice. I did it with chicken stock. The apple juice will make it so much sweeter. I'm trying that next.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, that looks so good, LeAnne. I feel like I can almost smell it coming through the screen. There was a couple comments like, I'm getting really hungry. And I'm like, yes, me too. And I love that soup. I love soup this time of year. And as LeAnne said, this is super easy and just colorful, but also kind of like fancy and impressive looking, I feel like. So awesome, LeAnne. Thank you for sharing that. I love the addition of the curry. That's just, I could eat curry at every meal. So I'm definitely going to try this.
Wendy, there were a few questions maybe you can address with the group since not everyone could see them. Can you talk about nut butters? One question was, is peanut butter a nut butter?
Okay, yeah, thank you. So I tried to jump in the Q&A and answer a few, but yeah, that one did come up a couple of times. So that's just kind of boils down to semantics. I just kind of separate them out. I think of peanut butter, as I'll say peanut butter for peanut butter, and then nut butter, I'm more referring to like almond butter, cashew butter, some of the other options. And there's nutritional value to both. Almonds especially are higher in omega-3s and things like that. So it kind of depends on your flavor preference. Peanut butter kind of sometimes gets a bad rap, and I don't think that it should. It's very healthy. I would encourage you to look at the label. There's some that might have some kind of inflammatory oils added to it. So I like to go for the more natural peanut butters. So look for just pureed peanuts and salt versus a lot like Jif. Sorry, unfortunately for my kids who love Jif, has like palm oil added to it, which is an inflammatory oil versus an anti-inflammatory oil like olive oil or avocado oil. But any of them are great, and they could be a great option at breakfast, like spread it on a banana, spread it on an apple. But yes, so there is a difference between the two. And then there's really so many different options now. So if you're not a peanut butter, almond butter person, I've heard cashew butter is really good. I haven't tried it.
There was a question, I think, directed for LeAnne, but Wendy, you can answer as well. Are there spices that are similar in flavor to curry? There's an allergy to cumin, curry, and soy sauce. So can you recommend any spices that could be similar?
Do you have any ideas on that one, LeAnne?
I don't, but I'm sure there's lots of recommendations online that would have similar flavor profiles.
Yeah, and I think probably it could just be, obviously if you have these allergies, you've been living with it and which ones you do like that you could substitute with. I think butternut squash soup itself can be just sort of a great neutral base. I don't know if you're able to do chili powder. That might be a good alternative. Ginger. Coriander. I'm trying to think of other ones. So curry in and of itself is like a combination of different seasonings. And so I can't remember which ones are in there right now. So I might be naming some that also you can't do if you're allergic to curry. I've never tried it in the soup before, but I like doing butternut squash and putting cinnamon over the top. So I don't know if that's an allergy as well, but that's a really good combination with butternut squash. And I love the apples in there too. So this is just a great example of a super fiber rich meal.
Wendy, can you talk about the health benefits to salmon? The question was, salmon is a fatty fish. Is it still healthy?
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Great question. Absolutely. So salmon, you've kind of heard good fats and bad fats. Salmon is really high monounsaturated fats, so just really, really healthy for us. Also really high in omega-3s, which is something that's really hard to get enough of. You probably heard about omega-3s a lot. So they're in fish oil, and they're really good for an anti-inflammatory effect in our body. They also can help lower cholesterol. They can help lower triglycerides. You can get them through things like walnuts and avocados and plant-based sources, but because we are animals, we absorb the animal-based sources and they're more bioavailable to us, so we'll use them more effectively. And salmon is literally the best way to do that. I often, when working with clients, encouraging them to try to have salmon at least once a week, even twice a week. And as I said before, so fat is not the enemy. Having some fat present in all of our meals is actually really, really positive. And so that could be your fat source at your meal. So have that, over a bed of greens with some brown rice, and you've got just a beautiful meal. You've got your fat, fiber, and protein.
A question about water intake. I drink a gallon of water a day. Is that too much?
I don't think so. Most people who are doing the gallon are usually exercising quite a bit. It's more maybe than you need necessarily, but as long as you're not displacing meals, as long as you're still eating enough, I don't see any problem with that amount. I wouldn't go much more than that. But again, I know a lot of people who work out a lot. That's sort of their goal throughout the day. So as long as you're, leaving your meals feeling full and it's not displacing food and making you feel overly full. There is something called water intoxication, but you have to drink an inordinate amount of that before amount of water before that would happen. So I think you can stick with your gallon. I wouldn't go much more than that though.
A question back to the salmon. How about farm-raised salmon? I've heard some not so good things about this.
Yeah. Thank y'all so much. These are great questions. I think it really, for that situation, boils down to sort of know your source. So it's pretty cool that now, I used to be like, oh, no farm raised, because I toured one time and they're in these teeny tiny tanks. This was actually for tilapia. And they're in these little tanks and their waste is floating around and there's way too many in the tanks. And that kind of made me afraid of anything but wild caught. I always would look for wild caught in the grocery store. And I generally still gravitate towards that if it's available, if there's not a big price difference. But there actually are these really cool fish farms out in the ocean now. And so they'll just have these giant nets. And so they'd be, they're still held captive so that they can eventually be harvested, but they're able to grow up and swim in the natural ocean environment. And so in that case, it's almost the same as having it wild caught. It's still a healthy fish. It still has eaten its natural diet. It hasn't been in too cramped of a space with other fish. So Whole Foods does a really good job with this. They have their different grades for the fish. So you can usually talk to the fishmonger there or at your local fish market about this and say, was this tank raised, farm raised, or was it ocean raised? And so if you're buying it at the store, when it just says it on there and you really can't ask, then in that situation, I would still lean towards the wild caught. But let's just say the farm raised side of things is getting better. So I would just, ask and clarify. And also, I feel like I just need to say, fish is so good for you. So if you have a trouble getting access to wild caught, I would still say that having it at all, especially because you're only having it every once in a while, is better than not eating it at all. So I don't want it to be prohibitive if you aren't able to get access to the wild caught. But just plug for fish that it is really positive part of our diet for a lot of reasons. There's a lot of things in fish and seafood in general. So shellfish also. A lot of compounds, zinc, copper, things like that we really, really need that are hard to get in other foods that are only in seafood. So if you love seafood, incorporate it as much as you can. It's really positive for you. Let's see, is anything else?
There's a few more. There were a few questions. This session has been recorded. I will absolutely have it up online. It should be available next week on the CRC website. So crcraleighcolleges.org. You'll be able to view this, and I'll get the recipe for the soup from LeAnne, and we'll get that posted to the website as well, so you can all enjoy it for Thanksgiving or beyond. All of our previous recordings from actually the last 2 years of the Staff Professional Development mini series are available on our website. So please check it out. You can view recordings there and also additional items from each of those sessions.
And Mara, if you don't mind, I'll put up my contact information just one more time. I've had a couple people ask for that.
Absolutely. Okay. We can also include Wendy's email address on our website too. So if you want to reach out to Wendy for questions or for her nutrition consulting, feel free to do that.
Yes, definitely. So many great questions, y'all. Thank you so much.
We'll hang on for just a minute longer. If anyone has more questions that they want to add, please drop them in the Q&A or in the chat.
Thank you guys so much for the engagement and the awesome questions and for spending an hour with us. I know given the past 20 minutes of our life, the last thing a lot of people want is another Zoom. So you guys are awesome for investing in your personal health by taking your lunch break to do this. I've really enjoyed it.
We'll go ahead and wrap up. Thank you so much, Wendy. Thank you, LeAnne. This was fantastic. I hope our attendees enjoyed it as much as I did. And keep an eye out for our CRC newsletter that comes out every month. We hope to have some more sessions for you. If you have a recommendation for a session or a recommended speaker, please feel free to reach out to me. We love to connect with our colleagues, and I will see everyone after the holidays. So thanks, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Happy holidays.